Hi everyone, it's Joe here from Lawn Solutions Australia and welcome to this episode of Turf Talk where I'm joined by Nathan, my colleague. Nathan, how you going?
Thanks, Joe. Your favourite teammate?
Favourite teammate.
Still, hopefully.
Still with that, yeah. Someone else has come up lately, but you'll still.
Oh, nice.
Not you, Mick. Sorry, someone else. So we're in autumn. Time flies. The first 3 months of the year are gone very, very
Way
quickly.
too quick.
2 months. 2 months? 2 months of the year have gone very, very quickly. So just a bit of a recap. What have we sort of seen over summer? Because I know we preached hard on this podcast about 4 or 5 months ago about how hot and dry it's going to be, but it hasn't quite eventuated. So what have you been seeing around the place weather-wise?
It's sort of been the exact opposite. Some areas obviously have been quite dry still, but up the east coast of Australia, it's been a lot wetter than anticipated, and El Nino is definitely not really occurred. I think it's going to occur later in the year, potentially for the summer of 24-25. But yeah, definitely been a lot wetter, and the conditions we've experienced for lawns have been a lot more probably difficult in a different way.
Yep.
So we've had a lot of inquiries about disease-related issues with lawns staying damp or humid and damp for extended periods, not being able to mow frequently off the back of that, and disease developing. And then other things like pests and grubs have probably occurred a little bit earlier in the season than they normally would. So definitely quite a few challenges there for lawn owners the last few months.
In a weird way, it's been harder for people than what we thought it would be with hot and dry, because at least with hot and dry, you can regulate the amount of irrigation you put on your lawn, obviously if you're not in water restrictions. But with excess rain, there's nothing you can do to stop it.
It's very challenging to do anything about it.
Yeah. So that's why I know we're stressing and we're trying to prepare people for the worst of hot and dry, but in a lot of ways it's been worse than that by being too wet. So what's happened, I guess, I know we're in Berry, a couple of hours south of Sydney on the south coast, and we get more rain than a lot of coastal areas in this town. We've got a high level of rainfall, but what it does is like you said before, it stops people being able to mow. But what a lot of people don't understand, and this is something I explained a couple of years ago when we had all that rain, is it's not just the rain, it's the lack of sunlight as well. And if you have a variety like, Tiff Tuff or Kikuyu or any other common cooch, they're not necessarily shade tolerant. So when there's rain, there's cloud cover, so there's a lot of shade. So a lot of people think the issues they're seeing are directly water related, but a lot of the time it's just a lack of sunlight too, which I think has led to what you spoke about just then.
Yeah, and it might be warm, it might be hot. We think of we look at the daily temperatures, but yeah, if it's quite overcast conditions, it's quite difficult for grasses. So it's been an interesting period, and we've had a lot of diagnosis issues where we've had pictures sent in to us and people are unsure what's going on, or they're concerned about leaf spot and things like that.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time it's just a matter of riding out the conditions, doing what you can, aerating the lawn if you can, trying to get a bit more oxygen into that damp profile, using fungicides, but only when necessary, or if all of the treatments haven't proven successful in eliminating the disease that's come to fruition. But now we're going into autumn, and I think conditions, well, it's a bit interesting, I guess, because some people have experienced the extreme wets and humid conditions. Some people have had still pretty dry and hot, and then there's probably been a lucky few in the middle somewhere that have had perfect conditions. Their lawn's been growing like mad. They've been enjoying getting out there and mowing it and getting the best it's ever looked. So for those, well done.
If you enjoy mowing, it's been a good season for you.
That's it. Absolutely.
In a lot of places, it's been crazy. But let's stay on disease for a little bit because I know you and the rest of our team answer a lot of questions on our social platforms, emails, phones, and that sort of thing. And I think disease has been much more consistent than what it normally is. And disease is hard because if someone has a weed in their lawn, it's black and white. It's that weed, or most of the time it's black and white. You got clover, you got bendoy, you got summergrass, wintergrass, whatever. Yeah. Disease is a little bit more technical because there's primary and secondary diseases. So diseases can be in your lawn, but they're not the one that was there first. They're secondary from what can come first. And I know a little bit about lawn disease, but I'm not an expert. It's quite a specific field. So with disease, I guess the good thing about disease is a change in condition will generally naturally remove the disease from your lawn. It's not going to be there forever if left untreated. But what a lot of people don't understand is you can apply preventative fungicides. It's not just a reactionary thing. So if you're in an area that gets consistent humidity and you feel like you're battling disease all the time, or your lawn just isn't looking quite right, or it's always looking brown or black or moldy, I think people should look into some preventative fungicides as well and not just be reactionary. I know we've got acelepryn for grubs and oxyfert for weeds when it comes to preventative, but we've got products like Tombstone, which have some preventative effects. So I think that's something that people should look at. And you mentioned aerating before and the importance of that. With disease.
A combination of the two. If you can get more oxygen into the soil, and you can look at using Tombstone Dual or something similar that's going to be a preventative type treatment within the soil as well, and you know you're going to experience those conditions because you do year after year experience disease-related symptoms, then it can be a great way to get on the front foot with it, just as you would a pre-emergent. So like you say, it's and it's been really important probably for more people, obviously this year in the tropical areas, more north, but we've experienced it in the southern regions as well this year.
And a lot of the reasons it happens, obviously you can't help rainfall, that's fine, but there are some things you can help to limit disease, because lawn diseases love humidity, so they love heat and they love moisture. So that's why we say not to irrigate at night, because the water doesn't get off the lawn and it's still warm, so it creates that disease-friendly environment. And the same thing happens when we get a lot of rain and then we get a 31-degree day. The air's sticky, you can feel the steam coming off the ground. That's what disease loves. So like I said, whilst you can't stop the rain, there are a couple of things you can do now to help your lawn recover. And I'll approach it two ways. The first is if you've got shade, that generally means your lawn's not going to dry out as quickly, obviously, because you don't have the direct sunlight. So trying to trim back trees, thin out trees is a good way to let more light into your lawn. The more light you get into the lawn, the more sunlight, the more it's going to evaporate and the quicker your lawn's going to dry out. The other main thing I'd love people to look at, and this is a big issue that we see, is poor drainage in lawns is a massive factor. A lot of the time people move into a house, they didn't lay the lawn, they've got no idea what's underneath. It could be a good profile, it could be a very poor profile. So getting a shovel, digging a little hole, taking a core out of your profile is a good way to look at your drainage. And if you find it's quite hard and quite compacted, then maybe spring next year, or if you're in the warmer climates, you can do it now. Start to look at improving that soil profile, because that will help a lot moving forward, trying to incorporate some sand or sandier soils into the profile. And you can do that by top dressing, by coring and top dressing, by actually putting drainage in, like ag drains and that sort of thing. I just think if you've had these problems, it's definitely something worth looking at going forward. In saying that, I think the El Nino that we didn't have is still going to happen. So there's that to factor in as well moving into next summer. But for now, I think if you look at preventative fungicides, letting more light in and improving your drainage, you're going to go a long way to helping those disease issues.
And I think a lot of people were sort of prepared for quite a hot, dry summer, so they had their irrigation all set up and prepared, and they had it on certain scheduling, and they didn't necessarily turn it off, even though rain was sufficient or more than sufficient in a lot of areas. So we quite often when we were diagnosing lawn issues, we were like, basically, are you still irrigating your lawn on top of the rainfall that you've experienced? And the answer was yes, and it was quite surprising. So it's like, just shut it off. You don't need it. If you've got an established lawn, you really, most of the time you only need to water on a as needs basis. We get the question, how often should I be watering my lawn at the moment? It's like, does it need it? Yeah. People massively overwater their lawns. They create shallow root systems that just become more thirsty, and their lawns are less drought tolerant. So that's another big thing that we've seen as well.
Your lawn will tell you when it's dry.
Absolutely.
It'll curl, it'll lose a little bit of colour. It'll tell you when it's got too much water too, because you'll get that black, brown, mouldy look down in the thatch layer of the grass, and it will look quite sad. And one thing before we move on to the next point I will say is we've seen a lot of Tiff Tough lawns in particular. Tiff Tough's a really popular product now, so it's out there a lot. And this summer we've seen probably more disease than we normally have in Tiff Tough, but not so much disease even, just it not being able to look its absolute best. We've seen a lot of Tiff Tough lawns where people want them 8, 9, 10 out of 10, and they're sitting at a 5 or a 6, and they're doing all the right things, but the only thing is just with these conditions is what I said before, it's so much cloud cover, which means so much shade. So effectively your Tiff Tough lawn's been put in shade for so long. Combine that with probably wet feet and a few other things, but just wait it out. If we get a week or 2, 3 weeks of normal drier weather, your Tiff Tough lawn will come back, no worries at all. It's just a period of time. It's not used to summers that the sun doesn't shine.
It's just a highly drought tolerant grass.
Yeah.
So as a result, it doesn't like excess water. It certainly can hold up to it and handle it. It's just it's sort of the opposite of what it was bred for. So as conditions improve, it'll spark right up, and I think a lot of people will be having their lawns looking the best they've probably looked all season in the coming weeks, rather than potentially over summer. So
and the flip side to Tiff Tuff, though, what we're seeing with zoysia grasses, Sagrange australis, is they're bred in Southeast Asia, so they're bred for these conditions. They love humidity, they love a little bit of cloud cover, they love a bit of moisture. So I know out on our plots here, the Sagrange and the australis have not blinked at all.
Absolutely
in
powering.
These conditions. They love it. They're growing just as quick as anything, but they're getting no disease. They're getting very little discoloration. So I think zoysia homeowners, whilst it mightn't like the hot and dry so much as a Tiff Tuff, well, it's enjoying this time of year, which what we've seen, which is good to see for zoysia. And I suppose onto everything growing quickly. It's an important thing to talk about growth rates, mowing, and probably PGR use as well.
Absolutely. With the rain, if you haven't been able to get out there on a regular basis to mow the lawn, it's been getting out of control, and people, when they are finally able to get out there and mow the lawn, they've been potentially scalping it, removing too much leaf. The lawn's got a bit leggy and they're cutting into the stem, and then they're sort of having to do a height reset off the back of inconsistent mowing. Or just not being able to mow it as often as you'd like to. Just time gets out of the way, you've been on holidays and those sort of things. So we're big advocates for the use of PGRs or plant growth regulators during this time if possible. Obviously, you want your lawn to a certain standard of health before you start looking at using these sorts of products, but they can be an absolute lifesaver as far as time management and improving the health of your lawn through periods where you can't mow it as frequently as you'd like.
In my opinion, like PGRs like Primo Max are the most underused and underrated product in domestic lawn care. I know they use them a lot on a commercial and a golf basis, but what they can do for your lawn is so underappreciated, I think. It slows the growth down, so it limits the amount you have to mow. And like you just touched on them, people go for a 2-week holiday over Christmas. The last thing they want to come back to is their lawn knee high. But even if you do mow regularly, PGR doesn't stop your lawn growing. It just slows it right down. But it slows all the vertical growth down. It doesn't inhibit lateral growth or lateral runner movement or anything like that. So what it actually does is it tightens your lawn up. It makes it more dense, thicker, helps to keep weeds out, and helps to make it more wear tolerant as well, despite the fact you're actually slowing the growth down. So there's so many good things that it does. And if you've got a cooch lawn, a hybrid cooch lawn, a Tiff Tuff lawn, it suppresses seed head better than anything else will. I know with buffalo grass, you can fertilise seed head out. Tiff Tuff's a little bit harder to do it, even zoysia grass to an extent, because seed head's more seasonal. But PGRs limit seed head production massively as well. They improve colour, they improve drought tolerance. So if you haven't done already and you're curious, I definitely suggest applying a PGR to your lawn. But if you are going to do it and you haven't sprayed a lot before or you're a bit unsure, really important to calibrate your sprayer. We've seen it a lot of times where people use too much or too little, and it can have quite an adverse effect on your lawn. So sprayer calibration is really important. And what I mean by that is Primo Max is, let's say the label rate's 20 mil per 100 square metres. You have to work out how much water you use over that 100 metres. Me and Nathan have different sprayers. One sprays faster than the other. Everyone's going to use different water volumes over their certain square meterage. So we've done a video on a blog on how to calibrate your sprayer. So just jump on Google and punch that in and it'll come up. It's really easy to do, but it's really important that you do it. And you mentioned before applying to a healthy established lawn. I think that's pretty important too. With
if your lawn's sparse and not very healthy, it's not the time to be using a PGR. If you're a beginner and you're not too confident with using different products, it's probably not the product for you just yet either. But once you do have a healthy lawn, and I've got a Sagrange lawn that looks great throughout summer, it's been powering. I think the neighbours are a little bit jealous of the fact that I've used PGR and they haven't. There's a lot of Kaiku lawns near me that need mowing twice a week. And if they're not mowing it twice a week, it's looking very, very average. I can get away with mowing my Sagrange once every 3 weeks. Obviously, I mow it a little bit more frequently because I'm into it. But it's a lifesaver. It's been and you just enjoy mowing your lawn a bit more when you do too. As the lawn's nice and dense and thick, and it's just levels up your lawn game, I guess.
Yeah, it helps so much, and just from my perspective, I cheat. I've got Tiff Tuff with an auto mower on it, so I don't actually mow the lawn, but it leaves a gap 40 to 50 centimetres from where the mower can get to the fence, and that's just an annoying amount of lawn because it's too big to whip. So you got to whip and then run a push mower around the outside. And with my TIF Tough, I was doing that once a week to keep on top of it. I started spraying my edges with Primo Max, and I'm once a month. So it's literally quartering the amount of time I have to mow. And just a couple of things, though, if you are going to look at it, I think with Primo, your first application should always be about half what the label's telling you to use. You got to wean your grass onto Primo. If you go at full rates, you can knock it about and you can discolour it a fair bit. So a bit of a disclaimer, start at half rates, and then your second, third application, you can start to bump it up to the label rate. People often ask how often they should apply Primo. There's I wouldn't say a really easy form. There's a formula to follow about growing degree days. You can find that on the Syngenta website.
Yeah, they have it on there, so you can utilise that.
Where it's basically the maximum temperature minus the minimum temperature for that day divided by something. I'm going to have to look at it.
Yeah, and that ensures basically that you're applying it as efficiently as possible and getting the most out of the applications and spacing them out as particular as you can. Obviously, as soon as you notice your grass starts growing quickly again, obviously it's starting to wear off and you can apply it again. So it depends on what extent you're looking to try and get your lawn care program in place with a PGR.
Yeah.
But if you're pretty fastidious about how you go about it, then certainly look at doing the calculation so you know when to reapply.
Or if you're like me, you just spray it when it looks like it needs it again.
Yeah.
But do the calculation, don't listen to me. And just one more tip before we move on from PGR is mixing a little bit of liquid iron. I know, like our Iron Guard product, in when you apply Primo can be a great idea. It doesn't have a lot of nitrogen, doesn't have any nitrogen or nutrients really, does it? So it's not going to, it's kind of counterintuitive when you're slowing it down and then you're pumping it full of nutrients at the same time. So mixing a little bit of iron in with your PGR can just help keep the colour, even improve the colour. Because like I said, if you knock your rates around a little bit, it can slightly discolour your lawn. So mixing a little bit of iron in, liquid iron in, or iron chelate or whatever, can definitely help when you're applying Primo.
Yeah. Great information on PGRs, but obviously we're early autumn now, so most areas you probably look to not look at applying it now that temps are likely going to start going down. You may in Queensland be able to do one last treatment with it, but you want to make sure as temps are on the decline, that your lawn's as healthy and strong and as possible, and PGR might not be the best option for you in the autumn period if temps are already started to go down. So
a wonderful benefit of the online lawn movement that we're seeing a lot of the times, it happened with Acceloprin GR, and now it's happening with Oxifert or pre-emergent fertilizer. Now it's happening with PGR. Is companies are realising there's a demand for these products in the domestic or residential sector. So what they're doing is they're taking products that were previously really expensive and would have enough product to last a 150 square metre lawn 2 lifetimes. They're creating them in package sizes that are more affordable and more accessible to the end user. So it's really cool to see.
And I know seeing application rates in the hectares are quite difficult to sort of convert for a smaller yard. So
scares you.
Yeah.
On to the next. We seem like we're only talking about bad things at the moment, but we'll get on to some good things later. But grubs. It's been a... Usually we don't, you see grubs all year in different spots, different types of lawn grubs, but normally we get hit really bad in autumn.
Yeah. Right now is when we would start.
But it's been happening for the last sort of couple of months. I guess that's really stopped. Easily. We're seeing a lot of armyworm of late, which is pretty common for this time of year, but we did see them January, February, which can happen, but it's not something we really see. So best things for customers to do if they're worried about grubs or if they've got grubs?
I guess the first thing is to confirm that you do have them by doing a grub test. Basically, that can involve pouring a really large bucket of soapy water down across the problem area or the area where you've seen decline in the lawn into the healthy area. So what armyworm or lawn grubs do is basically they work their way across the lawn from one side to another, working as an army in large numbers. So if you could do a test in the area where they're likely present by basically trying to bring them to the surface so they need to breathe. If you saturate the soil with a soapy liquid, they'll come to the surface to breathe, and then you'll obviously know if they're present or not. And then you can look to treat them with a grub killer product like Battle Insecticide, which will be key. But just on a thing, we get a common confusion thing with lawn grubs or armyworm in that I think in Queensland, lawn grubs are what are referred to as armyworm. In most other areas, I think armyworm is just called armyworm.
Yeah.
And when you're referring to black beetle larvae, that's what's actually referred to as lawn grubs. So lawn grubs is used a bit interchangeably across the two.
Queenslanders. So armyworm we're talking about.
As in the caterpillar.
The striped caterpillar.
That's right, yeah. Yes. So they're the ones that are particularly destructive. Obviously, black beetle larvae or lawn grubs can be very destructive as well, but they don't move across the lawn quite as quickly. Mm-hmm. It's armyworm in particular that we've seen really big issues with. Yeah,
and just with Nath tips before about the warm, soapy bucket of water on your lawn, it's best to do that in the afternoon or at dusk if you can, because that's when most lawn grubs are most active and they're feeding. And another trick you can do is just get a beach towel, dunk it in water and lay it on your lawn in the afternoon or in the evening. Come back out in the morning and lift the towel up, and if there's grubs there, they'll come to the towel, they'll come to the moisture, and you'll see them pretty easy. And armyworm are pretty hard to miss because there's generally a lot of them.
Yeah, we've seen pictures where you can literally see the profile of the lawn is like a wave. It's moving. There's so many of them present in the soil profile.
And I suppose the good thing, if there is a good thing about them being surface-dwelling grubs or they eat the leaf, is when you do apply an insecticide, it works really, really quickly. Like within 5-10 minutes, you'll start to see dead caterpillars on the surface. So Nath mentioned battle insecticide before, so its active is bifenthrin. It's a nice, safe active to use. It's pretty readily available. Battle's a great product. It'll go a long way for you, and it's registered for all pests, including termites and ants and that sort of thing. It's a knockdown insecticide, so what that means is it'll obviously treat the grubs straight away. So if you have grubs present in your lawn, you can see them working. Always use a knockdown initially, like Battle or something with bifenthrin in it. The preventative products like Acelepryn GR and also GrubGuard Ultimate, which is our product that's in a nice handy-to-use 4-kilo bucket instead of the 10-kilo bag that Acelepryn GR comes in, they do have some knockdown effect, but they're more used as a preventative. So if you have grubs in your lawn, we always recommend using a knockdown and then following it up with applications of Acelepryn or GrubGuard Ultimate. I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that'll protect your lawn for up to 6 months. The GrubGuard Ultimate will work for that long. So then you can look at applying it twice a year and you're pretty much set from there. It's just a matter of, if you do get an infestation, if identified that you have armyworm, immediately, as soon as you possibly can, you're going to limit the extent of the damage that they can cause, because they can rip through a lawn within a week. Get the insecticide down straight away. Repeat application after 7 to 10 days as well. You want to make sure you're knocking over that life cycle of them. The moths will still be present. They'll still be laying their caterpillars in the lawn. So really important you knock them over with a couple of applications.
The handy thing with a product like Battle, which is our knockdown insecticide, is it's a 750 or 1 litre bottle. And I think it's 12 mil per 100 is the label rate for armyworm. Could be a little bit higher than that, but it's good to just have it in the shed, because like Nath just said, if you see them, like it's literally you drive to the shop right now and you get stuff like it. They can knock a lawn over in a weekend sort of thing. So it's handy to keep a bifenthrin product, whether it's Battle or another one, handy in the shed, because you just never know when you're going to get something. And with Acelepryn, insecticides is a scary term for a lot of people because they always sound like they're nasty. And over the years, there were some products that were nasty. Thankfully, chlorpyrifos is one of them that's been taken off the shelf, and there's been a lot of other ones. So Acelepryn, I won't say the active because it's a really, really long word and I know I'll stuff it up.
Chlorantraniliprol or something.
I always think of Constantinople, the city when I say it. But
that's pretty close.
But it's exempt. It's exempt from poison scheduling. So there's actually no PPE required at all when you're applying Acelepryn. So Acelepryn and bifenthrin, all these products now, these insecticide products, are so safe to use. There's no re-entry period there. Like I said, there's no PPE required, so you can be pretty confident in using these products if safety is a concern of yours. And the number one question we always get is, what's it like with pets? The safest answer is with Acelepryn and GrubGuard Ultimate and Battle bifenthrin-based products is just keep your pets off when you're applying the product. Once it's dried and onto the leaf, they're very, very safe to come back on. Unless you have grazing animals like chickens, it's probably best to keep them off for a couple of days.
I think the phrasing of the question we get is it safe for my dog? No, it's not safe for your dog. Please don't feed it to your dog. But certainly safe to use in and around the yard, and make sure that, just just have the re-entry period. So when you apply it, keep the dog off the lawn, and while the product's been washed in and waiting to dry and absorb, then keep them off the lawn. Generally for the day, in most cases, is just best, and then let them out the next day, and you're good to go from there.
There's one easy way to not have to worry about safety around bifenthrin, is that just use acelepryn twice a year.
Exactly.
And you won't have a problem. The chemistry in it, it's so good. Like, it's a really effective product. And if you use it at the max label rates, you'll get 6 months out of it. So I know with my Tiff Tough lawn, it was just a matter of, I used to acelepryn when I fertilise. I haven't stopped fertilising because it just doesn't need it now. But when I did, it was September and March. If you just stick to that, you're going to have a grub-free lawn. It's insurance.
Exactly.
More than anything.
And you might see moths and things like that present around the home and in the eaves and places like that, and you can't stop them from flying in and around, but you've basically got a protective blanket around your lawn itself. So whilst you might see them, it doesn't mean that the product's not working. It's doing its job for your lawn. It's just that they're definitely around, and you'll be glad that you've got the protection there and ready in place.
Absolutely. And moving away from diseases, weeds, pests, and all the other nasty stuff that we've been seeing a lot lately, is what can people do sort of now renovation-wise? We get a lot of questions at this time of year saying, hey, can I cut my lawn down? Can I core it? Can I top dress it? We've got to be a little bit careful this time.
Is it too late? Yeah, is a big question. And so many climate factors, the lawn variety that you have and its ability to recover, how fast it grows and things like that. So it's not an easy answer, I guess, in some situations.
If you're unsure and you're on the fence, just give it a cut. If you just want to remove some thatch, just give it a cut 1 or 2 notches lower than normal. Don't go in for the whole top dress and core as well, because you can run the risk. But if you've got a hybrid couch lawn or a couch lawn in Brisbane and North, you're pretty safe for a little while yet. But it's only do it if you look like your lawn really needs it done. If you have a fast-growing variety like Kite Couch, Tiff Tough, and you're in the southern states, like I said, just if you want to remove a little bit of thatch, just take it a notch or 2 lower on the mower now. In a month's time, don't do anything, because you just never know with the weather. But as long as you're still getting a couple of catches off a week and you still notice it's actively growing, you can take it a notch or 2 lower. But I wouldn't do the whole top dress core thing now. I just wait till spring.
This is probably your last opportunity to do that sort of activity just yet. And anything, you're definitely not doing it as vigorous as you would in early to mid-spring, like you would a full lawn renovation. If you're in Queensland and the lawn's still powering along and you've looked at the extended forecast and it's still quite good for at least another few weeks, another month, do what you can. But just be considerate of that, because if you send it into the winter period and it hasn't had a full chance to recover, it's going to have more of a decline and drop off in overall health throughout the winter period. And you're going to be waiting for the warmer temps in spring again before you're going to be able to get it to bounce back fully.
And if you've done a reno already this season, you're probably not going to really need to do one. You might have some slight thatch issues and that sort of thing, or there might be a little bit of unevenness in your levels and you want to fix it up. Just wait. Just bide your time.
Just wait.
And it'll be spring before we know it, and we'll be talking about renos again. So
exactly.
Now, just with the time of year being autumn, it's a pretty important time for lawn care. It's probably one of the most important ones in a lot of ways, because we're coming into the dormant period. So if you don't do something now, it's very hard to do it once your lawn shuts down and goes into dormancy. So we'll go through a bit of a list here about what people should be looking at doing now. But I guess the first one we'll start with is if you're in the southern states, probably the most important one. That's applying your pre-emergence. There's a nasty little sucker called wintergrass that's probably already germinated in some areas. Some areas it germinates all year round. But your pre-emergent application in autumn is going to be really, really important. I know it's probably not very handy if you're listening to this now, but if you're in Vic, you probably should have already had one completed in sort of January, February. For wintergrass control, but you could have done that anyway. If that's the case, 12 weeks later, I'd apply it again. So wintergrass control with pre-emergence is so important, and the reason it's important is because wintergrass is really hard to remove once it's emerged. I think we spoke about it before in here. It's a nasty thing to try and spray out. You can pull it out, but it's a pretty painful job if you've got a lot of them. So pre-emergence is the best way to do it. Oxifert, Oxipro, anything with oxidizon coated fertilizer is a great product to use. Just remember, when you're applying pre-emergence, they will not touch weeds that you can see. So it's a pre-emergence, so it's meant to kill the weed before it emerges. Sometimes you will still see some germination, but don't stress. It's already taken in the herbicide. It's going to be a couple of days before it's removed.
Winter grass is not really performing as per its name in a lot of areas. We've seen instances of it right through summer in some areas. So, and it's a prolific seeder. So basically, once you see some and it goes to seed, it's just likely that those seeds going to go into the soil. It's going to spread rapidly from there. So if you see some, try and get it before it goes to seed. Pre-emergence will hopefully stop the majority of it emerging in your soil.
Yep.
But now's the time to get a pre-emergent application down if you haven't done so already. And if there is some already in the lawn, pull those out by hand or treat them with a post-emergent wintergrass killer, as well as getting the pre-emergent down. If you target wintergrass with both pre and post-emergent and you keep on top of it for a couple of seasons over the next couple of years, a heavily infested lawn with wintergrass, you should be able to get on top of it.
Yeah.
But if you're only treating with a post-emergent and you're not super consistent with it, you're probably going to have ongoing issues year after year after year. So, yeah, we can't advocate for the use of pre-emergents anymore with regards to wintergrass.
And the other aspect of wintergrass too is like any weed, it's keeping a healthy lawn will greatly limit the chance of wintergrass actually germinating. I know if you look at your lawn now, and you've got a clump of wintergrass, chances are it's going to be in a wet spot or it's going to be in a shaded spot. And the reason being is because your lawn's thinner and not as dense and not as strong in that area. So wintergrass will germinate any chance it can get. But it's not just wintergrass. There's a bunch of other weeds that these pre-emergents cover and control. And throughout winter, the last thing you want to be doing is spraying herbicides all the time. So get a pre-emergent app in and you'll be thanking yourself for it. The next one we're going to talk about is fertilizer, and this is it's a horses for courses thing here because it depends where you are and what type of lawn you have. But I guess we can all agree on one thing, and that's a fertilize, whether it's liquid or granular, prior to winter is really, really important, regardless of your lawn type or where you are. It just gives that last little hit of nutrient before we get into dormancy and before we get into cooler months. I always tell people like Easter time, Anzac Day, somewhere around that period is a good time to apply fertilizer.
It's an easy way to remember.
Yeah. Doesn't matter about the variety. Granular, liquid, whatever you want to do. A granular feed can be really good at this time of year, regardless of your variety. Like even if you have grasses like Tiff Tuff or Segrange Zoysia now, I'm almost an advocate for virtually no fertilizer on Tiff Tuff a lot of the time if it's a pretty well looked after lawn. But I think if you're going to do it prior to winter is a good time to do it. If you don't want the surge growth that you can get by fertilizing these varieties, even at this time of year, just go at half rates or get yourself a fertilizer that doesn't have so much upfront N.
Yeah, but I think it's the most important fertilizer in the entire year. Obviously, helping your lawn give it a boost as it's coming out of dormancy into spring is probably the second most important, if not equally most important. Mm-hmm. But yeah, sending your lawn as warm season grasses, that is, into winter as healthy as you possibly can is so important. And getting that fertilizer down before the soil temps really drop too low is key, a really key component to ensuring that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess as well, one thing with fertilizer that I will touch on that I still hamp on, I know everyone sort of knows this, but please water your fertilizer in after you apply. Don't try and wait for rain. With a lot of people fertilising this year, they see a little bit of rain coming on the forecast and I'm going to chuck some fertiliser out. But like we had the other day, we had a forecast of 90% of 5 to 10 and we got 55 mil in the day. So you just never know. If you get a large dump of rain, it will basically make your fertiliser application null and void because it's just going to wash it all out of the profile. Or we can get a forecast for a perfect amount of rain, which will be 5 to 10 mil, and we'll get nothing. So you're best off to get the sprinkler out or put your irrigation system on and control the amount of irrigation you put on your fertiliser. If your fertiliser needs to be irrigated in, most of them do, but don't rely on rainfall. I think that's a pretty key thing.
If you are trying to time it with rain, do it when there's only a light amount of rain forecast is sort of the key. Then if it doesn't get quite enough, you can add additional irrigation. But if you forecast for rain for a few days, it's very likely it's going to get way too much water and it's just going to make it not as effective.
Yeah. So. And a couple of other things that we can look at before winter is a hit of iron can definitely help now. Even if you have fertilised, if you're just looking for that little colour pickup as we transition into winter, iron applications every couple of weeks, if you're into applying liquids, can really help keep your colour moving into winter, particularly for those first few months, let's say May, June. depending where you are into July, when you don't go into full dormancy, but you just see your lawn starting to go off a little bit, regular hits of iron combined with the granular fertilizer application can just keep that colour moving into winter. If you're colder than that and iron's not going to cut it for you, obviously pigments like Colour Guard Plus are a great way to keep nice green natural colour into your lawn coming into the winter months. And not only colour, but Colour Guard also keeps heat in the plant and applies a little bit of nutrients to it as well. So.
And the iron's going to give you a visible benefit in a slightly darker colour, but Iron Guard that we supply also has fulvic acid in it. It's got hormones in it basically to help with all-round plant health. And plant health leading into winter when soil temps are dropping is really important. You want your lawn healthy as much as you can. So creating a strong, vigorous sort of lawn is key, and Iron Guard provides that as well. It's not just a colour hit. So if you're not just looking at colour, seasonal transition with an iron-based product, usually with additional micronutrients like fulvic acid and things like that, is going to give you good all-round performance.
Great advice. And I guess as we head into wrapping this up now, just a couple more things on getting your lawn healthy in preparation for the cooler temps. One thing I will say that we probably don't say enough in winter is make sure you try and keep your lawn free and clean. When I say that I mean by leaves and debris that can fall. I know autumn's obviously deciduous trees. It's when they shed a lot of their leaves, and what a lot of people don't do is it looks pretty nice a lot of the time too, sitting on your lawn, but it's blocking the grass's ability to absorb sunlight, and it's shading it out, and it can actually hurt the grass right before the cooler temps set in. So a lot of the issues we see, grass has just been smothered by leaves and other stuff that's fallen during autumn, which looks beautiful, but if you're not removing it at least semi-regularly, it can give your lawn some issues, can make it maintain too much moisture, and then winter comes and you're waiting till October, November before you can fix those problems again. One more thing that obviously not leaves falling off, but a similar sort of thing is trampolines. A lot of people got trampolines for Christmas. They do every year. Kids are out there jumping on the trampoline. It's fantastic. Just prior to winter, look at moving your trampoline as regularly as you can. If you have that ability, if you've got a big enough yard, if it's just stuck into one corner, then you're just going to have to cop some tall, spindly looking grass underneath for a little while. But if you got a tramp for Christmas, now's a really important time to move it around as often as you can, because if you leave it in one spot too long, like I said with the leaves, you're going to come into winter with a patch that's not looking its best, and then it's a wait and see till spring, summer.
If it's too cold and the kids aren't using it, maybe look at taking the mat off completely if you can as well. As options like that. I know a lot of kids have started getting those full sort of outdoor gym type gymnastic setup things for their backyard as well. Fortunately, they don't block out the sun. So if you've got one of those, great. Get them onto something like that rather than the trampoline. They're just a bit of a pain in the ass to mow around, unfortunately. But that PGR might be the answer for there.
Don't pack it up and put it in the shed, because I've packed them up and put them together before, and it's not a fun thing to do. So don't worry about that. I think we've covered.
I think that's it. Yeah, I think we've covered everything that people have been experiencing in most areas over the last couple of months, and what to sort of plan for and prepare for in the coming months ahead. So.
And if you're unsure about any things that we spoke about today, we have a video blog or an article or a written blog on pretty much everything that we spoke about. So jump on our YouTube channel, or you can jump on the lawn care section of our website, lawnsolutionaustralia.com.au, and it's a library of all things to do with your lawn. So if you've got any questions or anything, you can ring us up, email us, or jump on our socials and ask us, or you can just jump on our website or on our YouTube channel, and there's all the information you could possibly need is there. Alternatively, obviously, you can get in touch with your local Lawn Solutions Australia member as well. There's one near you with any questions regarding your lawn. But good to chat. It's an important time of year to be discussing all things lawns, and I think Nath has given you some great advice there on what to do. But it's a good discussion, and we'll catch you right next time.
Catch us next time. Thank you.
Thanks.
We need like a sick sign-off.
Trampoline!